We'll just allow 2 more minutes to allow people to join, and then we'll get started. Thanks everyone for your patience. All right. Welcome everyone. I'm Nina Sadowsky. I am the program director of NYU Los Angeles. Welcome. It is my extreme pleasure to welcome Nekesa Moody. Am I pronouncing your name correctly? I hope. Yes.
Nekesa,
Okay. I
Nekesa.
always check. Tonight, I'm very pleased. Thank you for sitting down with us. Welcome to NYU Los Angeles, and welcome to Los Angeles because you're a recent transplant, right?
Yes, yes, I am. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. So you have a very illustrious career in entertainment, and you've come to be the editorial director at The Hollywood Reporter after, I think, 16 years at the Associated Press.
Actually, it was, I'm dating myself here, but it was about 20 something years.
Okay, all right. So was it just time for a change, or was there a particular challenge or opportunity that you saw in this new position that motivated you to come west, young woman, and try your hand here in LA?
Yeah, I think it was basically more about the opportunity. I loved being at the Associated Press. It gave me such an opportunity to do so many amazing things from, covering award shows and planning award show coverage to interviewing some of the top people in the world, stars in the world. It was wonderful. But to be able to be at the Hollywood Reporter, such an esteemed magazine and brand across all platforms, and that just was just too enticing to pass up. I had done so much at the AP again. I had been there for a very long time, and I felt like it was time for a new challenge. And this was a perfect place. Like I wouldn't have left otherwise.
Right. And so you moved from Brooklyn and you came out to LA, and then you found yourself in the middle of a pandemic and a stay-at-home order, right?
Exactly.
So good, welcome. Glad we made you feel welcome right away. So what do you need? What can we tell you? Do you need a dry cleaner, a good bagel place? What can we do to try to make you feel welcome here in Los Angeles?
You know what? I feel pretty welcome already. It's just I would love, as everyone else would, for things to be more open. I know that some of the stay-at-home orders are lifting, but with the new variants, I'm a little bit worried. So I think that that's been like the hardest challenge is to be working virtually. We I haven't met most of my staff, except for virtually. I haven't had a chance to really mingle with people within the industry. Most of my meet and greets have been Zoom. So all of them, I should say. So it's been a challenge. But it's beautiful here. I love it here. My husband has family here, so that's been great. Um, it's frustrating, I'm sure, to everyone to be at home all the time. I really love the office environment. I love being able to, those quick conversations that you have after a meeting, or just like, the water cooler moments that you get a chance to really talk to people and have stories spark. But I know we've done a great job otherwise. So I'm pretty proud of what we've been able to accomplish.
I'm glad to hear that. At NYU LA, we have mandatory 5-minute dance break every afternoon at 4. That's one of our traditions that I miss, frankly. So I was researching your background in preparation for this interview, and I read that at one point you considered a career in the law. And I'm an ex-lawyer in recovery,
Oh.
I like to say, and that you felt that there was a better path for you in terms of what you wanted to accomplish in journalism. So I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about where you see the intersection of those three things: law, society, and journalism. How do those three things interconnect?
Well, I think that one of the things that drew me to law, and I was in college. I mean, I was undergrad, so it was very early, but I was very interested in the idea of making change and making an impact in people's lives. And I actually had an internship at the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, and I found the minutia of like preparing cases to be boring. I mean, even though I wasn't really doing it, just watching, I was just like, okay, this isn't what I anticipated necessarily. But I do believe that in journalism, you can really have an impact as well. And especially in the stories that you decide to tell and who you feature, the way you tell a story. I think it's really important. I mean, journalism is so important to the foundation of our country. So, I felt like I could have an impact by what I decided to focus on.
Hmm.
One of my very, very earliest stories was about environmental racism. You know, I did, that was when I was like a newbie reporter in Albany, New York, and I've done so many different things. So I really do believe that.
What was your very first?
Okay, so I started out as an intern for the Associated Press in Albany, New York, and I remained at AP up until last year. I mean, last year. But one of the great things about being at the AP is that I was able to grow and do a lot of different things. So, like, I covered state government, but I also, I covered West Point football. I covered, a lot of different things that allowed me a chance to get to grow.
Mhm.
So, yeah, so I'm very thankful for that.
Wow. So what your whole career sort of basically through one track. That's very
Yeah.
cool, I think, these days, right?
Yeah, it's very unusual. I mean, people are always surprised that the length of I stayed at AP, but I stayed there because it always gave me great opportunity. A lot of times I believe when you start at a certain organization, if you start in one particular role, it's hard to migrate out of another one. But the Associated Press, they were very much like, oh, okay, you're in Albany, New York, and you want to write about music. Okay, if that's what you want to do, okay, we'll figure out a way for you to do it. You can, they encourage people um, to write outside do other things outside their specific job description. So I appreciate that.
Could you talk about that segue a little? Because I know a lot of your early career was music journalism. I'm a music junkie, and I read the list
Oh,
of people that you've interviewed, and I was kind of like, damn, I am so jealous right now. So how did you? Was it just the support? You said I want to do this, and AP supported you.
yeah.
You just
It's
go
it's
out.
really it's really funny. Like in the Albany bureau, it's weird because it's like small upstate, but at the same time at the time we had a state house reporter who was basically our de facto music writer. His name is David Blotter, who is now like the illustrious TV media writer for the Associated Press. And there was David Germain, who was a film critic, but did entertainment there. So I used them as my example, and at the time I had the arts editor was Dolores Barkley. So I I used them as an example, and I said, okay, how can I contribute from Albany? And at the time, no one was really writing that much about so-called urban music, i.e. Black music. So I used that as my entree to kind of do, like, I think my very first interview was Brandy. And which shows, like, she was like 15 at the time. So that just shows how long ago that was. But I used the opportunity to do things that people weren't really covering that needed to be covered. And that's how I found my lane. So from there, I did more interviews, and then eventually became my beat a few years later.
And why was music your choice? Was it because you just love music personally, or were you fascinated by musicians? Do you sing?
And yeah, don't have any talent and when it comes to music, but I was fascinated by, like, I would read Billboard when I was a kid at the Barnes and Noble. And so, it was a fascinating time in music. There was so much going on, so much different, so many different careers that were popping up. It was the beginning of the neo soul movement, and that was much easier to do than, let's say, probably acting or like Hollywood stuff, because you really needed to be more connected. Like, music was, I think, a little bit more accessible.
Mhm.
So that's one of the reasons why I gravitated towards music as far as doing it for the Associated Press.
So I saw that you have interviewed everyone from, Barbra Streisand to Prince to Taylor Swift to Beyonce. I mean, is there a particular musical icon that you interviewed that you feel like that just like made your heart flutter? Was there someone that was really like, oh my God, this is a thrill?
Um, I would probably say Prince, just because the idea that, when I grew up, I was like a teenager watching Purple Rain in the theater, and just to be like in his dressing room with the purple candles and the purple this, and he's addressing me, looking me straight in the eye, and it was the beginning of a um, I wouldn't say a relationship, but I interviewed him like 3 times, and the last time I think was like in 2014 or 15, like about a year and a half before he passed away. And he requested I talk to him, and I went to Paisley Park. So to be in Paisley Park, hearing the Doves and being like, and him taking me to one of his rooms and playing the music on YouTube, it was like surreal. It was like, wow.
Right. Yeah, that's a great story. I would treasure that forever. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So, was there anyone that really surprised you in terms of that you interviewed that was not at all what you expected? That you were like, "Huh, didn't see that coming,"
You know
or
what? I'm
yeah,
trying to think. Sometimes I'm surprised by the niceness of people. I would say Beyonce and Taylor Swift are probably about the nicest people I've talked to. But I think everyone's just been really wonderful. Like, I talked to James Brown, I talked to Dolly Parton, all the people, like, just what they were able to share with me. I'm thankful about. Like, I remember one time waiting like about two or so, like into the wee hour of like almost 12 o'clock in the morning to interview Mariah Carey. And I didn't think it was going to happen, whatever. And then we spoke from like, I would say like 2 hours, and she was amazing. She's wonderful to talk to. And I think maybe she was one of the people who were surprised. And she's so there's so much to her, so much depth. And she was really gave great insight. So maybe her. But there's so many people that, I was just surprised by. And I'm thankful that I spoke to some of the most famous people, but sometimes people who weren't necessarily as famous but had a great story to tell. I mean, that's part of the reason too. I mean, things that I was drawn to, like being able to talk to people that had a really
maybe
great story to
one that
tell.
stands out for you, one of
I'm
those.
trying to think, I'm trying to think. I should. I've just spoken to so many people. I forget.
To put you on
Um,
the spot. I thought that's interesting. So I was
but
curious.
yeah, but I mean, I just think going back, like there was this singer named Kina who, was trying to make it, and she had a great album, but she had a great story about trying to like breaking out of a girl group. But she just had a really great story. And I look back in some of the great stories I've interviewed with people like, you know, um, I got really great material from a lot of those people. So it was really great. And one of my favorite people to talk to was Aretha Franklin. We talked a lot over the years, and she was so. It was the first time I interviewed her. She was. I had always heard that she was kind of difficult to talk to, and she might give you like one word answers and not be into it. And that was what's happening was happening in my interview, until I realized that she loved Young and the Restless, and we started talking about Victor and Victor Newman and all that stuff, and really had a connection there. And then, I talked to her off and on until close to when she passed away, like in like maybe like I want to say like about 3 or 4 months before she passed away. I texted her, and to be able to have that relationship, to know like she would call and say, hey, I'd like to talk to Nekesa Moody. That was really wonderful.
I think there's a real art to being a celebrity interviewer and actually forging a connection. because I think, celebrity culture demands so much from people, and people are constantly trying to get things from them. And, and doing press is part of the job, which is not always welcome. So I think that really speaks a testament to you that you were able to forge those personal connections.
Oh, thank you.
I'm sure you got better interviews as a result of it too.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the great things is to be able to, I mean, the whole point of doing interviews is to be able to get something that's revelatory and get something that's a little bit different from what other people have gotten. I'm thankful I was able to do that. I think obviously being able to interview some people more than once, and early in their careers, like,
Mhm.
talking to Beyoncé when she was a Destiny's Child. When I interviewed Taylor Swift, she was performing, I think, at the Mohegan Sun, and it was before her second album, and she was already famous, but mainly as a country star. And I remember her publicist said that before I interviewed her, was like, "We'd like for you to interview her. We think she's on the cusp of great stardom." And she was so talented. I was like, and it's been great because I got to meet her mother and I got to meet her, and to see her rise, like, to become such a superstar has been really great to watch.
So as your career advanced though, and you became more managerial, you did less, I'm sure,
Yeah.
interviewing. So can you talk a little bit about that shift, what that was like for you, and how that how you sort of, I guess, almost through that was able to even influence more directly the kinds of stories that were told and about who. So would you?
Right. I think that to be a good editor, a great editor, that you have to be able to, you know, not only shape the copy, but know that, there might be a great story that you're responsible for, but then no one ever knows, and that it's kind of anonymous, but you have to, it's all about the story, and it's all about, and for me, that was very gratifying to be able to, shape other people's stories, to be able to say, hey, we need to do this, we need to cover this particular aspect, or what about this show, and encouraging younger writers, and also challenging, established writers. Okay, like, this is what we need to look at. I mean, I've always been blessed because I've worked with really amazing people. So that's great. But really being able to shine a spotlight was great. So, and I still did interviews from time to time, and sometimes, and really, sometimes I do something that was really small, just to, because I was at the Grammys and someone needed to do it, and I knew how to do it, and do that type of stuff. But, and at times I do miss a little bit writing, but just to be able to know these stories are being told is the most important thing for me.
Is there someone that you wished you had interviewed that you haven't? Is there someone
Oh,
still on
well,
your list?
over the over the years, I mean, not anyone now, but obviously like Michael Jackson, I always wanted to interview him, and it was obviously the wrong time. Like, before, I remember before he was charged, for in his case, I was reaching out to his then publicist, and he was like, "Oh, he's just gun shy because of the Martin Bashir interview, but we should talk afterwards, and let's see if that dies down." And then, of course, there was this trial, and then when he was going on his comeback tour, I started to talk about, like, he was going to do the This Is It tour. I was having conversations, and they're like, "Well, maybe we can make it work. Can you come to London? Let's see." And I was like trying to convince my job, like, would they send me to London? And they were unsure. And then he died, and then they were like, "If you have to go to London, go to London," all this other stuff. And I was like, well, he's dead now, but he would have been someone that I would have loved to have talked to, because I feel like sometimes, you know, even the most famous people, there's an aspect that has not been explored. And then, of course, Whitney Houston would have been great to talk to. But I'm blessed that I think about some of the people that I've interviewed over the years who are not here, like Luciano Pavarotti, James Brown, and stuff. And, Gordon Parks. I'm like, wow, I'm old, but having the opportunity to talk to some of those great icons has been amazing.
Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about pop culture and how it interferes faces with society. So obviously, we're in a very difficult time right now. We've had this racial reckoning amidst a very violent election. We're all dealing with the pandemic still. It's a very divisive, difficult time. And so I'd like you to talk about two things from your perspective with respect to that. One is the role that pop culture plays in helping us process these times. And two, in sort of a more microscopic way, what role do you think entertainment journalism plays within the business of entertainment that is creating this pop culture? So let's dial back to the first one. So what role do you think pop culture plays and or will be playing in our processing of this time that we're all living through now?
I anticipate, well, first of all, there's already been like really great content that speaks to where we are now, like The Watchmen and shows like that really speak to the times that we're living in. I think that's what art is. It speaks to what we're going through and helps us kind of see different perspectives in a different way. The way that we introduce a character, the sympathetic way or the non-sympathetic way, it helps us frame like who we are. How we perceive our culture and the world that we live in. And I anticipate that to just continue. I think that it'll be interesting to see how people frame these last 4 years. I know there's so many different narratives. So I think that's going to be incredibly interesting. And I think it's our job to take like the closer look and really delve deep into what things mean. You know, Sometimes people, go a little bit too far and just over analyze. But I think that just about everything speaks to where we are at this time. From like Bridgerton, the racial politics, not politics, but the racial dynamics of those to, certain movies that are out, they really speak to where we are as a country, where people aspirationally want us to go. So I think it's our job to kind of to unpack that and to help people understand what it all means.
I think that's really interesting. I mean, I think that, and I just want to ask this, candidly, like as a Black woman in a position of journalistic power at this point on time, I imagine there's both like a lot of opportunity in that and also a lot of challenge about trying to navigate those conversations. So,
Yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, go
I didn't
ahead.
want to.
No, go ahead.
I think that, for me, I have always been in a place where there weren't necessarily as many in my position and in my sphere, but I've always tried to be authentic in who I am and to make sure that part of my job is to tell. I'm not like the representative for all Black people, but a representative of a culture, and to be able to have to know that we should spotlight certain things, and that diversity has always been very important to me. Always been, especially once I got this position, but even beforehand, it's not just about Black culture, being able to spotlight Asian culture and different people. And, I think it's so important to be able to shine that lens, and, having this perspective. There are people who are not diverse who share the same goal, it's important to have that allyship. But as in my role, I try and make sure, like, are we looking at all aspects? And I'm thankful that I have always worked for people who were all about like that, work for, and I'm sorry, I had a staff that was always open. Most of them are always open to that, and looking at diversity in that way.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I think obviously all of the entertainment industries, music, film, television, all of them can do better. I mean, if you look at the statistics, both unemployment of women as well as people of color, it's appalling. I really like what you said about diversity being, but all the diverse stories, because sometimes I feel in a reductive way, inclusion and diversity gets sort of dialed down to a black and white question. And I
Right.
find that frustrating, because obviously there are Asian and Arab and, Armenian and a million other kinds of Americans. And I think that that's what we really need to be working to represent. So if you had a magic wand and you could just affect like a first step magically towards figuring out diversity and inclusion, what would you want to see happen across the industries? What do you think would be a good first step?
Well, I think in journalism, I would like to see more minorities in key positions. I think, obviously who is greenlighting certain projects and who are on the what people are on the boardrooms are also important. Who gets the opportunities, who gets the chance to tell these type of stories, and that goes from journalism to directors to not just leads. So I think that's all very important. Um, um, I know you said one thing, and that's a few different things for my magic wand, but that's where I would kind of start.
Fair enough. I think if you're going to have a magic wand, you ought to be able to have a few things, not just one. So as
Right.
long as I was setting those parameters, you were, right to take it. I think. I want to remind our audience that you can drop questions into the chat or the Q&A. We'll get to them soon. We have a few more that are prepared, and then we'll get to yours. So on a lighter note, I'd like to know, what have been your pandemic guilty pleasures? What have you been listening to, watching, reading that has helped you get through the pandemic?
I will say I have a 3.5-year-old son who controls the TV, so I watch a lot of Big Bad Wolf and Trolls and so forth. But some of them I like. I mean, I just saw Soul. I really enjoyed. So I listen a lot of the music I listen to. I listen to Smallfoot soundtrack like 50,000 times. But I love the new Jasmine Sullivan record. Been listening to that when I can. Um, you know. I cracked open the Barack Obama book. I haven't had a chance to read it. I try and catch up on like magazine reading and so forth as much as possible. And so and I let's see, I was trying a lot of stuff I haven't gotten through yet. Like, haven't finished all the Mandalorian. I haven't finished as much, but
With you on the Mandalorian.
yeah, I love the Mandalorian. I just haven't been able to finish it. But I try and catch up with a lot of things on Netflix as much as I can, and just check things out. Sometimes, a lot of times, you just want to, at the end of the day, just relax and watch some like House Hunters or Chopped, just to
Totally.
zone out a little bit.
I've actually realized that the reason I love HGTV is that it's a metaphoric recovery journey every episode. There's a house that's in terrible shape at the beginning of the episode. It's in beautiful shape at the end of the episode. Everything always works out regardless of how many plumbing or electrical problems there are. Very reassuring. So I'm with you on the HGTV. So you mentioned award shows before, and I've been to a few, and I'm sure you've been to many. So do you have any dish? I mean, I always like the Golden Globes because everyone drinks and gets really silly. So that's my favorite.
And it's funny because I never went to the Golden Globes, and I thought this would be the year that I would go to the Golden Globes, and probably will not be the case. But I've been to the Oscars, the Grammys, a lot of different things, and it's the Clive Davis party, the pre-Grammy party was always great to see all those celebrities, like you're sitting next to, really close to them, and seeing them, enjoy like jamming to like all this music, you see them dancing and so forth. But a lot of times, when you're there, you're sitting there, and I'm always, usually, especially the Grammys, backstage, like furiously typing or editing, so it's always been a lot of times it's always been about the work.
Right. Because you're kind of on. You're never just
you're just like
you're working, right? So
yeah, like the last Oscars, I was helping wrangle at the on the red carpet. Then I went backstage, and then got a couple of invites to parties. But I was just so done. At the end of the day, all I want to do is go back to my room, order a burger from room service, and just relax. And I guess also because I've been doing this for so long, like I've been at Cannes, I've been in all these other places, and sometimes you just see the same people.
Yeah.
So
It gets less glamorous when you're in your 6th hour in high heels.
yeah, exactly. But I've been thankful. It's always like, it's always it's always fun, it's always exciting, it's and it's like a whirlwind, especially the Grammy red carpet is like the longest red carpet ever. But it's, it's and then you do the backstage and all that stuff. And I always did as much as possible, to make myself as useful as possible. So
my best story is I was at the Golden Globes when a year that Christine Lottie won, and I was in the bathroom with her when her name was. So that was just sort of hilarious because she was like, "What was that me?" That also dates me, but. So we're going to turn out to questions from the audience, but I wanted to ask you just a couple of things. One is, what was the best piece of career advice you ever got along the way?
You know what? I was thinking about that. I don't really know. I'm trying to think about what the best career advice was. And I don't know why I can't think about it. But I remember actually the worst was when I was at the Associated Press. There were a few people. I remember I met someone who I talked to him early in my career. He had been at the LA Times and was trying to recruit me for a program. And then like years later, I saw him and I went to Associated Press. And then years later, I saw him. I said, he's like, "Where are you?" And he's like, I was like, "I'm at the Associated Press." And he's like, "Why? Like, why are you still there?" And actually, when I was an intern at the Albany Times Union, I talked to someone who's like, "You should not work at the Associated Press because they just work you to death and you don't get any attention and you don't get a byline." And I found that the Associated Press gave me so much in my career and just was such a foundation that, I'm so thankful that I didn't listen to people who were like, "Oh, you should go to this smaller newspaper and work your way up," or whatever, because the Associated Press was a worldwide platform and gave me sticking that course, put me on this path, and I'm so thankful.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting. I think that we often solicit advice, but I think the most important thing is to recognize it, and whoever is giving it is coming from their own perspective about what they want.
Exactly.
Okay, so there's a very good question here. Actually, this is I think from Julie Branson. This is something that had occurred to me when I was putting these questions together. So I'm glad she focused on it. She says, the Me Too movement fell off the radar with COVID and Trump, but the issue still remains. Do you think the issue of sexual abuse in the entertainment industry will be addressed again with the same fervor, or has the industry moved on?
I think the industry has moved on. I think that we are still interested in those type of stories. And I think, I don't think it's quite fallen off the map of me. I think like even the Michaela Cole show, name escapes me, my God. I May Destroy You speaks to that. And there are still women telling their stories. I think that, it's just changed in a way. But I think that, the way that people address people and interact with people are still, has changed. And that has been really interesting to watch. We have, intimacy coordinators, people are still telling their stories. So I agree that it doesn't have the same prominence that it obviously did in 2017, and obviously Harvey Weinstein is in prison. But I still think that people are, it's an important movement and people are paying attention to how people are treated in the industry.
I also hope that, we as women just, won't shut up anymore, right? That we've encouraged
Exactly.
people to not hold back things and to speak up in the not just tell stories from years ago, but speak up in the moment. And I think that's the real way to try to create change. I'm going to move on to another question. This one from Christine Dietner. Thinking about inclusion and diversity, how well do you think our animation industry is doing to represent our diverse world? particularly in feature animation. Christine would like to know, but if you had thoughts about TV as well, that would.
We actually at the Hollywood Reporter, we did a whole roundtable on animation and diversity and talking about the things that need to change. Obviously, there was a lot of discussion over the summer with the recasting of Big Mouth. I'm sorry, I'm forgetting the title of the show, and another show where white actresses had played either biracial characters, and then a couple other recastings of white actors who had played minority characters. So I think that the industry is making small steps or making steps, and I think that that's, and especially with the racial reckoning this summer, that people are even more aware of that. So we did an article about that. You have Soul that just came out with Disney, Pixar's first Black protagonist, and there's been a lot of discussion about how that came about and the way it was depicted. But I think that we will see even more. And on Netflix, there was a great short called Canvas that was done by someone who used to work at Pixar, a Black animator. And I think that we're seeing more and more people being able to tell their stories through animation.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's like somewhat like the democratization of filmmaking, right? Like the sort of prosumer equipment made filmmaking much more accessible.
Exactly.
Software is now making animation more accessible, and that is allowing more diverse voices to just find a path to making their own content.
Right.
This is a question from someone who I think because she's saying hi, Lori Jacobson. And her question is, do you think the entertainment industry needs to look harder on how they contribute to promoting a persona now versus the person after Donald Trump?
So I think I'm trying to make sure I'm answering the question correctly. I think I think we're talking about more in terms of coverage, maybe. And I think that people are, definitely need to be more aware, not to be taken, and not to just be to look at all facets of a person and not just be taken in by a personality. I think that with Donald Trump, people were so people forget, like, he had such a celebrity following before he announced his presidency, and the years that he spent on Celebrity Apprentice and The Apprentice, really, gave him such a following that, he was like a personality. Like a celebrity who could do no wrong. And I think that when he first announced, people didn't pay attention to, and didn't put the rigors on, like investigating his background and his finances and some of the other things that were going on, because they just saw the celebrity of Donald Trump. So hopefully we've learned from that.
Well, I hope generally that we go back to a celebrity culture where people are celebrated for actually doing things of note, as opposed to just being famous for its own sake. But that's just a personal digression. We'll move on from that. This question is really about going back to the beginning. Like, how did you break in? What was your first job after college? And do you have advice about how to break in?
My first job after college was an internship with the Associated Press. So, and obviously I had it for forever, but that was back in the time when if you successfully completed an internship, you were able to get hired by the Associated Press. It's a little bit harder now, but I would totally recommend, if you're like still in college, that you make sure that you apply for so many of these internships early. That I used to be on the internship selection committee once I in my years at the Associated Press. And one of the things people are looking for more so than ever is not just someone who's print focused or this focused, but being able to do, show that you know some print, but also know video, or are in can are platform a little bit platform agnostic. And it's always surprising to me that, there are people who are like seniors or juniors who are interested in journalism but haven't worked on a student newspaper or a radio station or so forth, or don't have those internships. You really have to, I think, try and do things as early as possible. But then again, having said that, if you're a senior and still want to do it, I wouldn't dissuade anybody. Always follow your dream.
Mhm. So I know you're relatively new in your new job, but do you have a vision or a dream of what you would like to accomplish? Is there something that you have as a particular goal that you've set for yourself?
I'm just going to be really general on that, and then the Hollywood Reporter stands for such great excellence in investigative journalism and so forth, and I just want to um, continue that rich tradition, and I'll even take it higher, and you know we're and to just continue to grow. I mean, digitally with video, and doing even greater things with the magazine. I have a wonderful, wonderful staff that I'm very proud of. I'm very lucky to work with. So
Who you're hoping to meet in person soon. So
yes, I've met a handful of them in person, but there's still a great deal that I have to see.
So Julie Branson asks, what changes do you think we'll see in content as we emerge from COVID? Well, I guess in content and in distribution, she's asking more streaming, fewer theatrical releases, a lot of animation. How do you think?
Definitely, I mean, obviously streaming is where it's at, and people, that's what they want to do. But I think from what we've seen is that, theatrical still matters, and that's why so many of the blockbusters are being delayed, because it's so important to the profitability of those films. And I do believe once people get vaccines, that people really do want to go back to a theater, want to go back to concerts. I mean, people miss that. I think that there are going to be a segment of the population that's afraid, but if we get the go ahead, I feel that, I definitely want to go back to the theater. I'm a little bit nervous, but if I feel like it's safe, I'm looking forward to going back to those times when it was just, you get your popcorn, you sit down, and being able to have that communal experience. We're all missing that. We're missing the communal experience, from dining to shopping to just being amongst people. And we are social, and most of us are social, and are missing that.
Yeah, I don't know that I am also missing it, although I don't know that I'll ever be comfortable at Coachella again.
Oh yeah. Well, I would have never been comfortable. I never went, but those type of crowds are not.
5 times, but I may be done now
Oh
because
yeah, I can't imagine, it's
I
maybe at my age or whatever, doing Coachella. Unless it's VIP and I'm rolling with Beyonce. I can't. Yeah, it's just too many people. And I mean, it was always like not in my comfort zone. But to be able to go to a concert,
I can't wait to go to a concert.
yeah, to see. I mean, you're just not going to get that from a Zoom video.
That is totally true. Although I know a lot of deadheads who are having very lively listening parties over
Oh, okay.
to be working for them. So this question is from Daniel Esquivel, who's actually our program manager. He wants to know, what about your role as a journalist is the most draining, and what is the most energizing? And I would also add to that, is like, what do you love the most, and what part of the job do you like the least?
I think the most energizing is coming up with story ideas, and seeing those things come to fruition, and also at the rare times when I'm still able to do interviews and that type of thing. That's probably the most exhilarating. Probably the most draining is dealing with some of the really administrative tasks sometimes, because it's a lot. You have a lot of planning.
I thought you were going to say publicist, dealing with the public.
Oh no, I actually, I think it's not as draining. I mean, unless they're calling you to yell at you or something like that, which I rarely get. I I enjoy talking to publicists and managers and so forth to get that connection and so forth.
Mhm.
Did I miss, there's something else about that?
Like, what do you, I mean, I think it was sort of the same. What do you find energizing and draining, and what do you love the most, and what do you like the least? I think you answered them both, though.
Okay.
Right. So,
Mhm.
so that's the end of our open questions from the audience. I just wanted to ask if you do you have any final pieces of wisdom that you would like to impart? I mean, I thought you said a lot of really interesting things today about finding your path. And obviously you have an unusual one because you worked your way up, through one organization up until now, which is, very unusual these days. But beyond sort of listen to yourself and find, did you have mentors along the way? Were there other things that helped you sort of find your path that you would recommend?
You know what? I actually didn't really have a lot of mentors, but I mentored other people, which I think is very rewarding to me. And so it's funny because some of the people that I mentored, first of all, have been very successful, but also gave me advice. I think, you can get advice from, someone who's 10 or 15 or 20 years younger than you because they might have a different perspective. And I've always appreciated that. And I think again, it's more like following your dreams, but it was very nerve-wracking to make this decision to leave a job that I've been in for so long. It's been very stable, and the people at AP have been my family and I loved. But sometimes there's something to be said about taking on new challenges.
Mhm.
And that's what, looking back in life, I wanted to be able to say, I did have many challenges at AP, but to take on a new challenge is scary. It's overwhelming sometimes, especially in this time, but I know it's worth it.
Well, I have a feeling that the Hollywood Reporter is very lucky because you're a badass. So I know you're going to do great things there. And I really so appreciate your giving us this time and being so generous with your answers and honest and frank with us. And thank you so much for coming. And, with that, we're going to wrap it up a little early, let you get back to your son and everyone else get back to Netflix. And I look forward to being able to see you in person.
Yes, I do too. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed talking with everyone.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Good
Bye
night.
bye.
Good
Good
night, everyone.
night. Bye
Thank you for
bye.